All right, welcome to your Wiley Manager Crash Course, where we try and give you a bit of a sneak peek into the topic area that Bob and I discussed during the full-length version of the podcast. And on this week's show, Bob, we chatted about setting expectations.
We did indeed, and the reason you want to look at setting expectations is because here's a blinding flash of the obvious, Jed. Are you ready? You can't hold people accountable for things they didn't know they were responsible for.
You can try, but you'll piss them off in the process.
Yeah, this is exactly it. So we talk about this in some length.
All right, so let's talk about quickly for the 3-minute version some of the do's that we shared.
Right, because we talk about do's and don'ts and some other things in the full-length podcast. So here's some things that you really do want to do well if you're trying to set expectations with your people. The first one are what we like to call the 3 R's, right? So this is refine expectations, reinforce expectations, and repeat expectations. If you do those things, if you can remember those 3 R's, you're going to be much better off. Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of times people end up saying, well, I did my planning with them at the beginning of the year. We reviewed last year's performance. We set up next year's performance. I did that.
Yeah.
See you in 51 weeks.
Oh.
Right? So it doesn't quite work that way. It would be nice if it did. But, business is a contact sport. Wear a cup, right? So you need to use multiple channels to get these things across. So you should have that conversation with people at the beginning of every year. You just need to follow it up with a variety of other media in order to do so.
7 times 7 ways, I think, is the old saying.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe it's not 7, maybe it's 12, or maybe it's only 5, but I know it's more than 1.
That's right.
Yeah. So make sure, too, is that when you're talking to people about expectations, if you hand them an expectation list for the year and you've got 75 things on that list, you're doing it wrong, okay? Because that's a laundry list. That has nothing to do with expectations. You need to give them a few key important things to get done,
right?
Rather than a ridiculous laundry list. You're just going to frustrate all concerned if you show up with that list. Make sure that you use your one-on-one meetings. That's a media by which you can discuss these things. Make sure that you use those one-on-one meetings. If you're not sure what you should be discussing in those meetings, start with expectations.
Indeed.
Okay? So we talked about this. How's that going? Is there any clarity I can provide around that? What are the results that you're seeing? Right? Again, asking questions around what your predetermined expectations are is a good way to use those meetings.
Okay.
Yep. Make sure you describe for people what the standards and parameters are, right? So I want you to do this within these parameters, right? So you draw a box around what it is you're asking them to do. Okay. So, you don't have to come to me to talk to me about anything as long as it's inside this box. Once you get out of that box, we need to have a discussion.
Right.
Right. And make sure that you define as clearly as possible what those boxes are. Right. Talk to people again about how you're going to measure their success. How are you and they going to know when this expectation has been met and how well it's been done? Right. So talk to me again about how we're going to measure success.
Okay.
Also, make sure that you give people the context for why you've asked them to do these things. So where does this fit into the big picture? Again, if you're just handing out tasks piecemeal, you're quite likely to be disappointed. Right? If you give them the expectation and you talk to them about why this is important to the larger organization, how it fits in with other moving bits, you're much more likely to get what you need to out of those people.
All right. Well, there's just a few of the do's that Bob and I chatted on the full-length version. If you want to hear some of the don'ts, as well as the rest of our conversation, you can get that podcast off of iTunes, or alternatively, you can get that right directly off of our website, www.wileymanager.com.
We'll see you next time, Jed.
Thanks, Bob.